The world was unprepared when the alien message arrived. It wasn't the hopeful beacon of interstellar friendship humanity had dreamed of, it was a declaration of dominance, an announcement of impending doom. The Vorathians, an ancient, nomadic species, declared Earth a newly discovered hunting ground. Their queen's voice echoed across every screen and broadcast frequency, her words cold and deliberate. Your kind will feed the strong. Resist and you will suffer more. The Vorathians descended in massive, spire-like ships, each one exuding an aura of invincibility. Their technology defied human understanding, energy barriers that deflected missiles, weapons that disintegrated entire platoons, and biological enhancements that made them faster, stronger, and more resilient than any predator on Earth. The first cities fell within hours. The horrors weren't limited to destruction. Captured humans were not just prisoners, they were livestock. Broadcasts leaked by the invaders showed humans caged, stripped of dignity, awaiting their grim fate. For the Vorathians, this was sport as much as sustenance. They took pleasure in the chase, their insectoid forms moving with lethal precision as they hunted their prey through ruined streets. In the face of this overwhelming force, humanity's initial reaction was panic. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying their most advanced weapon systems, but nothing worked. Nuclear missiles were intercepted mid-flight, their detonations reduced to harmless sparks by Vorathian shields. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky by agile alien drones. Even Earth's most fortified military bases crumbled under the weight of the invaders' assault. The Queen watched from above, her towering figure framed by the luminescent control room of her mothership. She observed humanity's struggles with a detached amusement, her mandibles clicking in what could only be described as contempt. They are weak, she remarked to her generals. They scatter like insects before the flame. On the ground, despair spread like wildfire. Families huddled in basements, clutching each other as the sounds of Vorathian hunting parties echoed above. Cities that once teemed with life became eerily silent, their streets stained with the evidence of humanity's helplessness. The sense of loss was palpable. Buildings that symbolized progress and resilience lay in ruins, their inhabitants either dead or taken. But in the shadows of this despair, something began to stir. The broadcasts of the Queen's mocking proclamations, meant to break humanity's spirit, instead ignited a spark of defiance. People who had never held a weapon before started fashioning crude tools of defense. Scientists, tucked away in hidden labs, began analyzing the fragments of alien tech recovered from failed skirmishes. A quiet determination replaced the initial panic, though the odds still seemed insurmountable. Amidst the chaos, whispers of a plan began to circulate. They were fragmented, incoherent at first, but they carried the weight of hope. Somewhere, in a bunker deep beneath the earth, the brightest minds and most resourceful leaders were working together. The details were unclear to most, but the essence of the message was simple: humanity would not go down without a fight. The Vorathians' greatest mistake was underestimating the very thing they sought to feast upon. To them, humanity was prey, soft, weak, and disorganized. But they failed to see what desperation could forge. While their hunting parties reveled in their victories, the seeds of resistance were already taking root. Humanity had faced extinction before, plagues, wars, disasters, and each time it had adapted, survived, and thrived. The Queen watched as her forces swept through yet another major city. The screams of her prey, the crackling of fires, and the distant booms of collapsing structures were music to her ears. They fall so easily, she murmured, her gaze fixed on Earth's burning surface. Yet even she, with all her power and foresight, couldn't see what was coming. For in the darkest moments, humanity does not break. It evolves. The Vorathians believed they had already won. To them, humanity was nothing more than scattered, frightened prey, incapable of mounting any real resistance. But they underestimated humanity's capacity to adapt under pressure. In the wake of the initial devastation, survivors began to organize. Small groups of civilians, military remnants, and rogue scientists formed the first resistance cells. Operating in secret, they utilized abandoned subway systems, mountain hideouts, and dense forests to stay out of the Vorathians' reach. These were not elite armies or highly equipped forces. These were ordinary people driven by desperation and a fierce will to survive. The first priority was information. Using salvaged equipment, the resistance worked tirelessly to understand the enemy. The Vorathians' technology seemed impenetrable at first, but humanity's ingenuity started to unravel its secrets. Biologists studied the remains of fallen Vorathian hunters, analyzing their physiology. Engineers worked with whatever scraps of alien tech they could find, reverse engineering devices to learn how to disrupt their systems. Slowly, patterns emerged. The Vorathians relied heavily on their hive mind connection, a biological network that allowed them to communicate instantaneously. Disrupting this link became a central focus. The breakthrough came when a resistance cell managed to capture a lone Vorathian scout. The decision of what to do with it tore the group apart. Some wanted to interrogate it, while others argued that experimenting on it crossed a moral line. In the end, necessity outweighed ethics. Using crude methods, the resistance discovered the scout's weakness, a specific frequency that caused disorientation and pain by interfering with its hive-mind connection. It wasn't a weapon yet, but it was a start. Armed with this knowledge, the resistance launched its first real offensive. A small hunting party of Vorathians was drawn into an ambush in the ruins of a major city. The humans used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and using makeshift explosives to disorient their attackers. For the first time, humans fought back and won. It wasn't a clean victory. Several resistance members were lost, but they managed to capture weapons and equipment intact. These small successes began to ripple across the globe. Resistance cells shared strategies and resources through encrypted communications, creating a network that the Vorathians couldn't track. Each victory, no matter how small, emboldened humanity further. The stolen weapons, though alien in origin, were modified to suit human needs. Drones, powered by scavenged Vorathian tech, became tools for surveillance and sabotage. Improvised EMP devices were deployed to disrupt the invaders' energy shields, leveling the playing field. But the cost of resistance was steep. Every engagement risked discovery, and the Vorathians were relentless in their reprisals. Entire regions were scorched in retaliation for acts of defiance, and the Resistance's victories often felt hollow in the face of such losses. Yet, these sacrifices only strengthened the resolve of those who remained. The greatest strength of humanity lay not in its technology or physical prowess, but in its capacity to unify in the face of annihilation. People who once stood divided by borders, ideologies, and histories now fought side by side. Engineers collaborated with soldiers, scientists with scavengers. Everyone had a role to play and no contribution was too small. The Queen, observing from her mothership, began to notice the shift. The humans were no longer running. Their skirmishes, once desperate and disorganized, now showed signs of coordination. For the first time, her generals reported casualties, and her hunters returned with stories of prey that fought back. She dismissed their concerns at first, attributing these incidents to the desperation of a doomed species. But as the Resistance's efforts grew bolder, her confidence began to waver. The Queen ordered her forces to increase their efforts, to crush the Resistance before it could grow further. But this only played into humanity's hands. The Vorathians' overconfidence blinded them to the traps being set. Resistance cells began targeting supply lines and staging hit-and-run attacks on isolated groups of Vorathians. The once invincible hunters were being hunted themselves. The turning point came when the Resistance successfully hacked into a captured Vorathian communications device. Through it, they learned the location of one of the Queen's forward command ships. Destroying it would cripple the Vorathians' operations in the region and buy humanity precious time. It was a risky mission, but the Resistance had no choice. Using stolen alien tech and makeshift explosives, a team of Resistance fighters infiltrated the command ship. The operation was chaotic, bloody, and filled with setbacks, but against all odds they succeeded. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, a symbol of humanity's refusal to be subjugated. As the Resistance celebrated their victory, the Queen grew furious. She could no longer deny that humanity was more than mere prey. They were resourceful, adaptable, and above all, relentless. What the Vorathians had dismissed as weakness was, in truth, humanity's greatest strength. They had ignited a spark of defiance that refused to be extinguished. Humanity's defiance had escalated from scattered resistance to coordinated rebellion. Every act of defiance built toward something larger, a single goal: to strike the Vorathians where it would hurt most. The Resistance knew they couldn't afford to keep fighting defensively. To survive, they had to turn the tide. The global network of resistance cells had grown strong, sharing intelligence and strategies through encrypted communications. Scientists, working in secret bunkers, refined the biochemical weapon that disrupted the Vorathians' hive-mind connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was potent enough to sow confusion among the invaders. Meanwhile, engineers repurposed salvaged alien technology to create new tools of war: drones outfitted with Vorathian energy weapons, armored vehicles equipped with improvised EMP devices, and mobile units capable of deploying the biochemical agent in concentrated doses. The first coordinated counterattack was launched with surgical precision. In a simultaneous strike across multiple continents, resistance fighters targeted Vorathian patrols and supply routes. The attacks were brutal and efficient, leveraging everything humanity had learned about the aliens' tactics and weaknesses. Hunters who had once stalked the streets with impunity now found themselves vulnerable. The humans used the terrain to their advantage, fighting in dense urban areas, forests, and mountains where the Vorathians' superior technology couldn't compensate for their lack of familiarity with the environment. Each victory, no matter how small, was a psychological blow to the Vorathians. For a species that had spent millennia dominating other civilizations, the realization that humanity could adapt and fight back was deeply unsettling. The Queen, once indifferent to the resistance, began to perceive them as a legitimate threat. Her generals urged caution, proposing to regroup and reassess their strategy, but the Queen refused. To her, retreat was unthinkable. She doubled down, deploying more troops and increasing the intensity of their operations. But humanity was ready. The resistance anticipated the Vorathians' response and used it to their advantage. They lured the aliens into carefully laid traps, using decoys and false intelligence to misdirect their movements. Ambushes became commonplace, and the once mighty hunters found themselves outmaneuvered by the very prey they had underestimated. One of the most critical victories came during the assault on a Vorathian energy relay station. The station powered the shields protecting the Queen's mothership and several other key Vorathian assets. The resistance launched a multi-pronged attack, combining ground forces with an aerial strike using modified drones. The battle was fierce, with heavy losses on both sides, but humanity's ingenuity prevailed. The relay station was destroyed in a massive explosion, and the Queen's forces lost one of their most significant strategic advantages. This victory galvanized the resistance. With the Vorathians' shields weakened, the Queen's mothership became vulnerable for the first time since the invasion began. The resistance quickly devised a plan to capitalize on this opportunity. They knew it was a long shot. The mothership was still heavily defended, and a direct assault would be suicide. But humanity had learned to turn the Vorathian strengths against them. The resistance infiltrated the mothership using a stolen Vorathian transport vessel, disguising themselves as a returning hunting party. It was a bold and reckless plan, but the Vorathians' arrogance worked in the humans' favor. They had never considered the possibility that their prey could infiltrate their ranks. Once aboard, the humans unleashed chaos. Sabotage teams disabled key systems, while strike teams engaged Vorathian soldiers in brutal close-quarters combat. The hive mind disruption weapon played a pivotal role. Released into the mothership's ventilation system, it caused widespread confusion and disarray among the Vorathians. For the first time, the Queen's forces experienced what it was like to fight without their hive mind connection, and the result was devastating. The once coordinated soldiers became disoriented, their movements erratic and ineffective. The Queen, watching the chaos unfold from her command center, realized the full extent of humanity's determination. Her confidence, so unshakable at the start of the invasion, now wavered. She understood that humanity's resilience was not a fluke but a fundamental aspect of their nature. The prey she had mocked had become predators, turning the hunt against her. Despite the resistance's successes, the mission was far from over. The mothership was still operational, and the Queen's elite guard remained a formidable obstacle. The humans knew they couldn't defeat the Vorathians through brute force alone. Instead, they focused on their ultimate objective, to destroy the mothership's core reactor. As the battle raged on, the resistance fighters pushed deeper into the ship, facing wave after wave of Vorathian defenders. Losses mounted, but the humans pressed forward, driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. The Queen, now personally directing her troops, made one final attempt to crush the invaders. But humanity's resolve proved unbreakable. At last, the resistance reached the reactor. In a desperate, last-ditch effort, they overloaded the core, setting off a chain reaction that would destroy the mothership from within. The Queen, realizing the inevitability of her defeat, made a final transmission to her remaining forces: retreat. As the humans evacuated the ship, the mothership erupted in a massive explosion, its destruction lighting up the sky. The Vorathians, now leaderless and demoralized, began to withdraw from Earth. Humanity had struck a blow that would echo across the galaxy. A reminder that they were not prey, but survivors who would fight to the last breath. The explosion of the Vorathian mothership was a moment of triumph, but humanity knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The Queen's forces, though scattered and leaderless, were still dangerous. Survivors across the globe watched the fiery wreckage streak the sky, a symbol of defiance, yet braced themselves for retaliation. The war was not over, but for the first time, the odds had shifted in humanity's favor. The Vorathians, crippled by the loss of their queen and central command, began to falter. Their hive-mind connection was severely disrupted, and without it, their legendary coordination unraveled. Individual Vorathians, once part of a seamless collective, now acted erratically, their confidence shaken. The once relentless hunters were no longer unstoppable predators but confused invaders trying to regroup. Humanity seized this moment of weakness. Resistance forces, emboldened by their victory, coordinated a relentless counteroffensive. Vorathian outposts and remaining strongholds became targets of surgical strikes. Armed with salvaged alien weapons, guerrilla fighters overwhelmed the fragmented alien forces, turning the tide in battles that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. The victory had come at a high cost. Entire cities lay in ruins, and millions had perished or been taken in the early days of the invasion. Yet, amidst the devastation, humanity found unity. People who had once been divided by nations, ideologies, and conflicts now fought side by side. The war had stripped away the barriers that once separated them, forging a singular purpose: survival. The Vorathians' arrogance had blinded them to the very traits that made humanity so dangerous. They saw only a fractured, primitive species, an easy target for conquest. What they failed to understand was humanity's capacity for adaptation, for finding strength in adversity, and for wielding desperation as a weapon. Every technological advantage the Vorathians brought to the fight had been repurposed. Every perceived weakness turned into an unexpected strength. Yet even as humanity triumphed, the war left scars. Survivors carried stories of unimaginable loss and sacrifice. Families torn apart, cities erased from existence, and entire cultures left to rebuild from ashes. But these stories also carried hope. They told of individuals who rose above their fears, who refused to bow to despair, and who inspired others to do the same. The war had proven that humanity's spirit was unbreakable, even in the face of annihilation. As the last remnants of the Vorathian forces fled Earth, humanity's leaders convened to discuss the future. There were no celebrations, no declarations of victory. Instead, there was resolve. They understood that the Vorathians would not forget this humiliation. If they returned, it would be with greater numbers and deadlier weapons. Humanity could not afford to be caught off guard again. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, not just to rebuild what was lost, but to prepare for what might come. The stolen Vorathian technology, once a symbol of terror, became a foundation for Earth's defense. Global collaboration, forged in the crucible of war, ensured that humanity would never face such a threat alone again. The victory over the Vorathians also carried a message, one that extended far beyond Earth. Somewhere in the vast reaches of space, other species had surely heard of humanity's defiance. For millennia, the Vorathians had roamed the galaxy, conquering and consuming without resistance. Now, for the first time, they had been defeated. The story of their failure would spread, and with it, the realization that humanity was not prey. The final words of the Resistance's broadcast, sent out into the void alongside the images of the destroyed mothership, carried both a warning and a promise. To those who would come to take from us, know that humanity will not fall. We will fight. And we will make you regret it. Earth began to heal, slowly but surely. The scars of the invasion would not fade easily, but they served as reminders of what humanity had endured and overcome. The Vorathians had sought to feast on humanity, to break them down into nothing more than a resource. Instead, they had awakened something unstoppable, a species united by resilience, driven by hope, and willing to fight for its survival at any cost. Humanity's victory was more than just survival. It was a declaration to the universe: Earth would never be an easy target again. Those who underestimated humanity would pay the price. The hunters had become the hunted, and the lesson the Vorathians learned would echo across the stars.